Hi, Jess.
Hi.
It's Carol here. Just got on. I had a hard time getting on, of all people, but I did. So I'm on. Once the president, Jerry Farnham, starts the meeting, I asked him to put you first. So once he gets things underway, we will introduce you. Okay?
Thank you.
All right, super. I'm so glad you're able to join us today.
Me too.
Hey, everybody.
Hey,
How we doing?
Jessica. Emma.
Hello.
Gosh.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing well, thanks.
Good.
There's the man, the myth, the legend.
There's the man.
Hey guys, how are you all?
So much
Great.
better now that I can see your face, to be honest.
See, it's those kind of things that make a cold day like this just warm right up.
That's what I'm talking about, buddy.
Absolutely.
Waiting for a few more people to come on. And
Yeah. Looks like there's Jeff trying to connect, and is there anybody else in the queue, Josh? Or
I disabled the queue. There is no longer a queue, so it's when people jump in, they jump in.
that's awesome.
Yeah, man.
So there's no Q, but there is QAnon.
Right.
Or do we simply just go from P to R?
That's another way.
Okay,
Yeah.
so maybe that answers a question for me. When Julie's email and I clicked on the link, it said there's another meeting going on. So
What?
I ended up going and putting in the meeting code and password.
Yeah, I got that too, and it eventually switched to this and let me in.
Yep.
I wonder if part of that was I had a Zoom that was from 11 to 12, and it
It
ended
said
up.
that you had another meeting going on.
Yeah, I just got off of Zoom at 11:59, so that could have been it.
No, that makes sense. Well, I guess to make sure that we are cognitive of Jess's time, we'll go ahead and start the meeting. I'll just do the normal opening with the pledge, and then I will turn it over to Carol so that she can introduce our speaker, Jess, and then we can listen to our topic of the meeting today, and then we'll do the rest of our meeting at the end after Jess is all done. Is that okay? Awesome. Thank you, Josh. You read my mind. I'm telling you what,
Proud to be an American.
that's right. If all of you would please join me in stating the pledge, we will open our meeting. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States
of America and
to the republic
for which it stands,
one nation, under God,
indivisible,
With
liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
So, without further ado, Carol, I'm going to turn it over to you so that you can introduce everybody to our speaker today.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate that. Well, it is my pleasure. I found Jess in an article, and I was so impressed with what she does and her background that I thought it would be really interesting to have her speak for a bit about what she does. Now, Jess is a full spectrum, she'll have to explain that a little bit, birth and postpartum doula. And if you don't know what a doula is, you will learn today. She specializes in newborns care, and she's a birth assistant, which must be pretty exciting. And she is a doula at Sacred Transitions Midwifery, which is located actually down towards the Bellas Falls area, and I didn't pick up on just exactly where. She's a producer of the Vermont Birth Experience, and she spends her free time hiking, writing, hanging out with her many animals, training, and doing a lot of traveling. And she is quite an international traveler, has actually worked internationally. She spent time at Dartmouth College, and I think that's where she first got her direction as to what she wanted to do with the rest of her life. So, Jess? I leave it up to you now. Jess Kimball, welcome.
Thank you. So actually, the Dartmouth story is kind of interesting. I'm one of 7 kids, and I attended my first birth at 15. So I graduated high school at 16 as a certified doula. I audited classes at Dartmouth and wrote a book on my experience there, which was published. It comes out officially in May, but you can order it through my website now and get a copy before May. And then my second book is also out, which is about postpartum doula work. So a doula is a non-medical professional who supports a family through preconception, pregnancy, birth, postpartum, and sometimes even loss. There's also end-of-life doulas. I think there's actually one who's based in Springfield. The owner of, the Crow's Nest? The coffee shop. I can't remember
The
what
Flying
it's called.
Crow.
The Flying Crow. She's an end-of-life doula. But my specialty is mainly postpartum. I started my training when I was 15 and attended many births, but really just fell in love with postpartum work. There's this saying, it takes a village, but families are sent home and the village isn't really there, especially with COVID going on, especially with just the day and age we live in where everyone kind of finds connection through social media instead of actually like getting out in their community and connecting with people. I remember when I was younger, being one of 7 kids, it was very hectic, always a lot going on, and anytime something out of the ordinary happened that was unexpected, it threw the entire day off. So if one of us got sick and she had to take us to the doctors or something, we didn't know who was going to get us off the school bus. But we had a neighbor that she would just call, and the neighbor would get us off the school bus. And I've noticed that that kind of village has faded away, and the support for families is becoming non-existent, especially with so many people being transplants. I grew up in South Carolina, but my grandparents lived in the house I currently live in Springfield, and I always knew I wanted to settle here. But it was an interesting experience because coming here, for a little while I had my grandparents, but then my grandmother passed and COVID hit and my grandfather moved down with my parents, and that community just kind of faded away. And I had to work really hard to connect with people, and during a pandemic that was even harder. And then you think about families who've just had a baby and they don't have the energy or the time to really go out and build this village. So I am kind of a part of that village and get to support them. I do a lot of overnight newborn care so that families are well rested. There's so many families I work with who either are students at Dartmouth or they are residents at DHMC, and they just have a very demanding schedule. And there's this expectation that they should be able to function on no sleep, and it's not practical, and it contributes greatly to postpartum mood disorders and mental health issues. So I get to be there to lighten the load a little bit for families. I do a lot of new parent education and just teaching families about all of their options so then they can use their intuition and trust their gut to pick what's best for their family. That work that I do as a doula is through Sunflower Postpartum Care, which is an LLC that I own. And then I recently took a job as a birth assistant at Sacred Transitions, which is in Bellows Falls, right on the main street. We have an office building that's like just above the hardware shop. And we do wellness appointments there, prenatal, postpartum visits. We also do a lot of in-home appointments, which is nice for, especially like with the winters up here. It's hard to get out the door, especially with a new baby and icy roads, so we come to your house and do your visit. Midwifery care is throughout the entire lifespan, so it's not just families who are expecting. We also see people who have not conceived yet and are seeking preconception consultations, just for regular checkups with women who need a pap smear or if they need STD testing or whatever they need. We have someone on staff who is a psychiatric nurse practitioner, so we're beginning to offer those services as well. We do deliveries at home, but also at the Monadnock Birth Center in Swansea, if we have a transfer to a hospital, one of the midwives tries their hardest with COVID. It's hard with restrictions, but usually one of us will go with the family and still be there to support them in more of the doula role, because in the hospital we're not delivering the baby, but we're... Dartmouth has, if you audit a class at Dartmouth, you just have to email the professor and ask, and it's free, and you can go and take a class. And for me, I really value continuing education, but I wasn't working towards a degree, so I didn't need the credit. So I took a sociology class on health disparities and was able to do all the assignments and be a full member of the class, just without receiving any kind of college credit. So I was able to learn a lot and make connections with a lot of people. And I remember calling my mom one day, because I'm 20. I called my mom and I was telling her about something I was doing on campus, and she said, "You're kind of a genius, because your older brother's drowning in student debt and fraternity fees and all of this stuff that's going on. He's so stressed out, and you're just going to college and not having any stress. You just kind of get to experience it and get the education." She called it a pseudo college experience. So I started writing down the stories, funny little things I noticed on campus. I was working with a family. I was nannying a baby for about 2 months, who I had done postpartum doula work for. They were in between daycares and I was helping out. And I was taking the class. So sometimes I brought her to class with me or just brought her on campus. And I also got to see this perspective of just everyone assuming she was my child and the judgment for parents who are students. I had someone come up to me who I didn't even know, and they just said, "You should just drop out already." Wasn't my baby, wasn't even an actual student, didn't even know who this person was. So I wrote all these stories down in a book, and published it. And that's technically out May 4th, but it's on my website, so some people in the community have snagged a copy sooner.
Awesome.
The website, you also can see a gallery of photos. She's quite a photographer as well, and it's amazing to see the joy on these mothers and these fathers, the families, and how you can tell they've connected as a family because of the experience that they've had. So it's really interesting.
The first birth I attended, I was a photographer, and it was at a birth center in Charlotte, North Carolina, and there was a doula, midwives, a service dog who was there for emotional support, and just this mom who had blue hair and tattoos, and it was just, I was 15, and it was just an amazing experience. My mom had 3 of her babies in New York, 1 in Connecticut, 2 in Rhode Island, and 1 in North Carolina. And the experience in northern states was so much better than the southern states. And there's this correlation between the states that have the higher maternal mortality rates have more restrictions around access to midwifery care. Home birth is not legally allowed in North Carolina, but people will still deliver at home. So they either deliver without a provider, and there's safety risks, or they deliver with a provider who is practicing illegally, which means when there's a transfer that's needed, that provider doesn't want to call an ambulance because they run the risk of getting arrested. Or they call an ambulance, they get arrested, and there's one midwife that was known in the community who was getting arrested all the time, and she was like, "Well, they keep putting me on the cover of the newspaper. People are going to start talking about this, and hopefully it's going to change." So she didn't care that she kept getting arrested. She would just go spend a night in jail and then go deliver some more babies. And she was an amazing midwife. The only time she was arrested was when she called an ambulance for a transfer when she knew it was necessary, when she did the right thing. It was very different for my mom delivering in the Carolinas. But one of my brothers was born at home in Connecticut. And then one of my brothers was born in the car in New York on the way to the hospital. The home birth was planned. It was during a blizzard. My mom had very quick labors. The minute her water broke, 30 minutes later, baby was there. And she called her provider, and she said, "I'm in labor. I know there's a blizzard going on, but I know this baby's going to be here soon." And she was like, "Okay, I'm going to head over. I'm not going to speed, though, because last time I was speeding, I got pulled over and I was late to a birth." So I'll drive as fast as I can. And then as soon as she got there, the baby was born in the shower. But the car birth, my grandmother, who used to live in this house, who passed away, she caught my brother, and my mom grabbed him and put him on her chest and then walked into the hospital with the baby in her arms. So growing up, I heard all of these stories, and that's what really inspired me to get into birth work. There were other things I thought about being a teacher when I was younger because that's what my mom did, but I think everyone in my family knew that it was going to be something with moms and birth and babies. The photos that are on my website are from births and newborn sessions, family sessions, but there's also a series I did about 2 years ago called Day in the Life of a Mom, and the families that are photoed are still able to be there to offer support. So right now I'm a birth assistant, doula, social media manager, kind of like Jane of all trades. But I will begin my midwifery program this summer, and then in 2 years I will be a midwife on the team and be able to do deliveries. We're actually one of the only countries in the world where when you find out you're expecting, the normal is to go to an OB instead of a midwife. We also have the highest maternal mortality rate of any developed country, and studies have shown that a return to the midwife's model of care would reduce, the World Health Organization says it would reduce the maternal mortality rate by 83%. And that's not just seeing a midwife instead of an OB. It's a specific model of care that includes more prenatal appointments, more postpartum appointments, and individualized care throughout the entire pregnancy. So if a family is struggling with something where we need to refer them out to a counselor, they trust us and can tell us that, and we're able to make that referral and get issues resolved before they turn into something bigger. What's considered normal postpartum is to have your first visit 6 weeks postpartum. And if something's going to go wrong, it's going to happen before that 6-week appointment. One of the biggest issues that I have seen in postpartum work, and my mother, mother of 7, raised us all and stayed home, I pushed her into doula work about a year and a half ago, and she's completely dived into it and loves it. But she worked with a family, and the partner had to return back to work less than 2 weeks after the baby was born, and the mother was at home caring for her newborn, trying to heal from, it was a textbook delivery. Nothing went wrong. Everything was completely normal. There was no reason to be concerned about anything. But she's chasing around her toddler, not getting adequate rest, and she hemorrhages on the bathroom floor. And no one's there to help her, no one's there to call for help, which is why we need an increase in postpartum support, better parental leave policies for both parents, because it's not just about the mom needing time to heal. It's also about the partner being there to support them and lighten the load and bond with their baby. That's a huge part of it. This new member's added to your family, and you're trying to get used to that, but then you're expected to just go right back to work. And there's not many laws in place that support a good parental leave policies in some areas. If you haven't been at a job for a full year when your baby's born, you are not entitled to any kind of leave, so you can be asked to come back to work 2 days postpartum as soon as you're out of the hospital. And there's people in Vermont and New Hampshire that have done that. A lot of people I know actually have returned to work less than 5 weeks postpartum. So my goal in what I do is really increasing the support that is offered to families, trying to make it more accessible, because midwifery care is covered by insurance, but it depends on what the family is looking for. Insurance can decide not to cover a facility fee, so a family might choose to have a home birth when really that might not be the first choice they would have made. They might have preferred a birth center, but they make that choice because they don't want to deliver in a hospital. They want that birth center experience, but they have to end up having a home birth because that's what will be covered. doulas are not covered at all. There is, in Washington County, they're trying to get some doula coverage, and they've gotten a little bit for Medicaid families. But insurance usually doesn't cover the services, and they're considered a luxury, which I think is quite crazy that a good birth and postpartum experience is considered a luxury and not just a right. So with my book and with the documentary that I produced, all of any profit made off of it, any proceeds, is going towards a family who had triplets. The dad is a full-time student and has trouble seeing, and they had natural triplets, which were, sorry, my dogs are in the background. But they are returning right back to school. Their babies were already born. They just got home from the NICU, but they were expected to just go right back to school like it never happened. He's a full-time business student, and doesn't really have support because with COVID, there's travel restrictions. So, if you do have family who can come up and help out, that's great, but it's not as easy as it used to be. So I got a little bit of a grant donation, and then whatever was made from the movie is going to provide them with support. So I'm really working with the community to try to make these services more accessible. I just taught a newborn care class with the Family Place in Norwich. I'm going to try to do one with the Springfield Parent-Child Center, but they covered it and it was on Zoom, so anyone could attend. So families all over Vermont and New Hampshire were able to attend and get some more information on just how to care for a newborn and different information on disposable versus cloth diapers, breastfeeding, bottle feeding, formula feeding, all of that. At our office in Bellows Falls, I run a baby wearing lending library where I do baby wearing consultations, and there's 40 different carriers that families can come and try out and borrow. Because I'm a big supporter of baby wearing. There's a study called African Babies Don't Cry, and it's about how when a baby's born, it's a very traumatic experience for them because they went from this space in the womb where they have everything they need right there to this big, bright, crazy world where everything is new and everything is overstimulating to them. I mean, you take a baby outside and show them a tree, and they're going to have a blast just looking at a tree because they've never seen one before. So in Africa, babies don't cry. Hardly ever, and especially not as much as they do in America. And the reason why is because they wear their babies, and even if the mother's working, the baby's still being worn, brought to work with them. They are right on their mother's chest, can hear her heartbeat. They're warm, closed from the outside world. Usually all you can see is a foot hanging out. It's just, if you see someone with like a wrap around them, you just know there's a baby in there. They have easy access to be able to nurse on demand. While the mother's working, she's able to wear the baby and still breastfeed. So everything the baby needs is right there. And the person who is the most familiar to the baby is right there. So I'm a big believer in baby wearing for bonding purposes. It promotes breastfeeding. Skin to skin is great. It releases oxytocin, which is the love hormone that helps with uterine contractions for healing postpartum. It helps increase milk supply, and it helps reduce the chances of a postpartum mood disorder. It also allows for multitasking when you're baby wearing because your hands are free. So you can feel like you're functioning a little bit and able to do things. So yeah, that's kind of the gist of what I do, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Have you had good luck educating people on this RAP system that you just spoke about?
Yes.
And embracing it more?
Yeah, I'm actually giving a speech at Keene State College next week on the African Babies Don't Cry study.
Yes.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Carol. My name's Josh. First and foremost, thank you for everything you do. It's so important. And we not only, I'm in the healthcare field, and part of Springfield Hospital at one point where we closed a childbirth unit, which was probably the single most difficult thing our organization has ever had to do. Mostly around reimbursement just not being enough to sustain the service, for sure. And what we've seen is a lot of what you speak about is great, you had a baby, get back to work. And that's probably one of the most difficult things that America has to deal with. And it is a family event. It is not only just a mother, it's the partner, it's the kids, it's everybody else that's in the household, grandparents, extended family, who's ever in the house, right? So I'm blessed enough to have a new little girl, and my wife and I had her just over a year ago on Valentine's Day. And we continuously look at each other and say, I don't know how somebody does it on their own, like absolutely alone. And it's people like you that make it possible for people that not only are alone, but people that do have help get through the day. So I just want to thank you so much for that. And congratulations on the midwifery program too, and taking an additional step. That is so important. We have always, in the GYN practices that we've used before, we've always recommended people seek out midwifery programs. There's some GYNs that are close-minded to that. I don't have to tell you that, but it is so important. There's so much more than the midwifery, but it's the coaching, it's ally, somebody right next to you. So my hats off to you. Thank you for everything you do.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Jess, you said that both books are going to be available within the next 30 days or so, or are available through your website currently?
So I wrote a book called The Modern Mama, and it's about how we're kind of breaking away from the nuclear family and what families look like nowadays with extended family living with family, or people that are transplants to another state, and just kind of the whole, basically what I just talked about, and also stories from my career as a doula. That one is available now on Amazon. And then my pseudo college experience is about my experiences at Dartmouth College auditing classes. I chose to go a trade route by becoming a doula, and I finished the program when I was 16 and graduated high school at 16 with it completed. Moved to France, Hawaii, all over South and North Carolina, and then Vermont and New Hampshire. And I was constantly reminded that I chose not to go to college. And everyone said that I was missing out on this vital life experience. And I couldn't help but wonder how that was more important. The thing that people kept saying was the social experiences were really important. And I wondered how going to a fraternity party could be more vital than going to Athens and Berlin and Dublin and falling in love with all kinds of people and foods and places, and just experiencing all different cultures and learning about the world. I didn't understand what was going on in these fraternities that could be so much more important than that. But I took a